Today we'll be covering every Space Marine rank and specialization. Well, every rank and specialization according to the Codex, that is. Sorry Space Wolf and Black Templar fans, don't worry though, we'll give shoutouts to the interesting foibles of non-Codex compliant ranks when they're relevant. Starting off, we've got to acknowledge that Space Marine Aspirants and Neophytes both are and aren't the same thing. Various sources like the 4th edition Space Marines Codex and the 5th edition Space Wolves Codex tell us that Neophytes are young humans who have passed aspirant trials and earned the right to begin Space Marine augmentations, whereas some sources like the Salamander's Omnibus and various other stories use the words interchangeably. So with that out of the way, Space Marine aspirants and neophytes are the hopefuls, those young boys attempting to join the vaunted ranks of the Emperor's Angels. Sometimes these aspirants are willing and eager to show their mettle, others are forcibly taken from their homes and families, leading to chapters like the Emperor's Spears to be despised by their homeworld's populations. Regardless, all aspirants are around the age of 10 years old when they begin their trials. The Space Wolves, though, will effectively recruit from any age with mixed success. Every chapter has its own trials and rituals. An aspirant must overcome these to even begin their training as a Space Marine. Should they fail, they will likely die or be turned into servitors. Yet as they clear the trials and complete their training, they receive their implants, genetic enhancements and surgeries to slowly turn them from human to Astartes. We've covered this process in our How to Make a Space Marine video, so don't forget to watch that. At around 16 to 18 years old, an aspirant will undergo their final trial, and, should they succeed, will face the implementation of the progenoid gland, aka gene seed. Should they survive this implantation process, they will become fully fledged Astartes. Quick aside before we get really stuck in, because after aspirants we lose all idea of what age a Space Marine might be at any given rank when they move into a role. They're probably a lot younger than you think though. Reclusiarch Grimoldus was around 200 years old when he reached his rank. Other characters too, like Titus from the Space Marine games, are also far younger than most realize, being just over 100 years old in the first game as a captain, and just over 200 in the second game when he was demoted to lieutenant. So don't get too hung up on the age a Marine is at during any given role, as it massively varies with the writer. Known in Codex chapters as Scouts, these are the lowest rank in an Astartes chapter. Successful aspirants will find themselves here, part of the 10th Company under the supervision of a seasoned battle brother to act as the squad sergeant. Scouts primarily serve as reconnaissance and stealth units. It's interesting that this is the role Astartes first see battle in. It teaches Marines the necessary skills to survive on the battlefield. Deprived of power armor and forced to make full use of cover, Scouts are essentially a way for a chapter to temper the arrogance of Marines that they know is coming. A Space Marine in power armor is basically a demigod on the battlefield, and all that power can and does go to their head, so the Scout position is where they try to temper them before they get that immense power. After serving their time in the Scouts, and with their sergeant's recommendation, an Astartes will leave behind the 10th and join one of the reserve companies. After serving in the Scouts, an Astartes will find themselves serving as a Devastator Marine. This will be the role in which most Marines see their first battle wearing sacred power armor. The job of Devastators is simple: provide heavy firepower for Astartes strike forces, a skill they would have honed in their capacity as snipers while they were with the Scouts. Once again, we see how raw Astartes are held back from the thick of the fray, this time holding the rear lines and providing supporting fire to the main assault. Devastators in battle basically spend all their time laying down heavy fire from good cover. No enemy is going to step into their firing lines unless they're mad or have a death wish. Devastators also serve another key role as providing Astartes an effective means of static warfare. Astartes, by their design, aren't big fans of static warfare. They are, on the whole, elite shock troops designed to break through enemy lines, punch holes and break defenses. Marines typically operate more like tanks. They're fast and wield mobile weaponry. Devastators, however, thrive in trenches, maintaining positions with good lines of fire. Some Marines never move on from being a Devastator. They find it their permanent home because that's where their talent lies. Most Devastators serving in battle companies are likely to be of this sort. After serving their time in the Scouts, being tempered, then serving as a Devastator. Seasoned further, Marines are finally let loose. Assault Marines serve as the tip of the spear and outriders for Astartes. These Marines' job in battle is to break the enemy line, and they're never really intended to hold ground. According to the Codex, Assault Marines are the first to meet the enemy. Their job is to go in loud, go in fast, and distract the enemy from other movements. It's hard to order your troops to move to counter the enemy, when already 20 or so demigods are butchering your infantry. Plus, in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, some threats can only really be dealt with by a chainsaw to the throat. We also think there's another reason. That's because after all this tempering and keeping them in the back lines, they can finally trust the Astartes to not go mad with power. That being said, being an Assault Marine is really the first time most Marines get to let loose. So Assault Marines do have a reputation of being glory hounds, and with good reason. Think about in a superhero movie when a character gets the power of flight for the first time. What's the first thing they do? They go flying as fast and as high as they can. Being an Assault Marine is the same for Astartes. It's the first time they get to really flex their demigod might. Though being fielded as an Assault Marine truly puts a Space Marine to the test. They meet the enemies of man eye to eye, face to face. They look madness and chaos in the eye and reveal to the chapter what they're truly made of. Kaito Sicarius first distinguished himself as an Assault Marine. It's worth bringing up the Space Wolves here because they don't temper their warriors before throwing them into the role of an Assault Marine. Bloodclaws are arrogant little who die in droves. It seems like a stubborn, arrogant flaw in the way the Space Wolves operate, because they lose so many warriors to this method. Yet, the Space Wolves have one of the greatest honor rolls in Imperial history. Though it still leaves us with the question, Space Marine recruits who pass all their trials are rare. Why not properly train them before, for want of a better phrase, throwing them to the wolves? Let us know what you think in the comments below. After completing their time as an Assault and a Devastator Marine, a Space Marine will become a Tactical Marine. In a tactical squad, a Space Marine can bring to bear all his skills learned throughout his career, to make him able to adapt to most any situation. They combine everything we've covered so far in one deadly, power-armored covered package. Tactical Marines are flexible, taking all comers and are able to deal with near any obstacle on the battlefield. They're truly the epitome of what it means to be Astartes. They're fast, heavily armored and heavily armed. No mortal force, and hell, even most aliens couldn't hope to stop a tactical squad of Marines breaking through their lines. Pretty much any story you read set in the 41st millennium that follows a non-Captain Astartes will follow a tactical Marine. We can't stress enough how important these Marines are, not just to a chapter, but to the Imperium at large. The Imperium being saved time and time again by a single Space Marine wielding a combat knife and a bolter. And some of you may be wondering, well, how has this changed for Primaris? Primaris don't really have these squads, and the honest answer is, we don't know. What we can assume is they still follow this progression broadly, as the new squads of Primaris still follow the Codex designations, with Hellblasters being fire support squads like Devastators. It's likely Primaris serve in a fire support squad, close support squad, then a battle line squad. How Phobos and Gravis fit this is unclear, but if we had to guess, Gravis likely get treated like Devastators and Phobos more like Tacticals. In terms of what they bring to the battlefield, Gravis bring that good old static warfare of the Devastators to everyone in it, reducing Marine mobility while giving them better protection and allowing for heavier weapons. Phobos, meanwhile, lets you have all the behind lines fun of scout squads, with the added protection of having all your Astartes in power armor. Usually, Phobos strike forces are formed entirely of Phobos armored Marines, and these are often employed in things like flanking maneuvers. How one becomes the sergeant of a squad in the Astartes. As with everything Space Marine varies from chapter to chapter. The Codex has the sergeants of squads appointed by their company's captains. Sergeants cover a wide variety of battlefield roles in the Adeptus Astartes. Primarily, they're charged with leading squads into battle, though honestly, sergeants get entrusted with a lot more than this. The number of Black Library books that feature Space Marine sergeants leading their squad through decisions that make or break whole worlds is uncountable. Those of you who have military experience or know a decent amount about military know that sergeants are a core rank to military structure, and that various grades are entrusted with a ton of responsibilities. To reach the rank of sergeant in the Adeptus Astartes takes a level of skill and heroism hard to imagine, plus a century or so of battle experience. Veterancy is a wide term in the Adeptus Astartes. Most companies have their veterans, but it's essentially just a sign of respect. What qualifies a Marine as a veteran varies between chapters, though usually it's just a Marine who has served for an extended period of time. If leadership is not an Astartes forte, but they are immensely skilled at combat, then they'll probably find themselves in the legendary ranks of a chapter's first company. Warriors of the first company have many duties, varying based on chapter. Primarily, they're the best fighters the chapter has to offer. Some, but not all, will even bear the legendary Crux Terminatus, making them as truly exceptional heroes even for Space Marines. Ancients are almost all Marines who are respected, but have been put out to pasture. You have this guy who's been kicking around for a few centuries, but he's no great duelist, no leader, but he's seen so much action. You can't waste him on a desk job. So what do? You have him hoist the company or even the chapter's banner high. He's a sage counselor, and his depth of experience can serve the chapter well. Yet he knows his duty now. No more visceral glories for him. He bears the glory of the banner instead. He also knows that this banner will eventually get him killed. In the words of Grimoldus, the enemy always wants the banner. There's something of a misconception around company and chapter champions. A lot of people seem to think they're up next for captain, but the Codex doesn't seem to encourage this. Instead, a champion is the hands-down best fighter in the company or chapter. In the case of a company champion or chapter champion respectively, champions walk with the honor of their chapter or company at stake. Their duty is to slay the warlords, champions and greatest monsters of the enemy, to seek duels and glory in the name of their company or chapter. There's another duty champions hold that's worth mentioning though. Captains are often better fighters than their champions, but if a captain is dueling an enemy warlord in single combat, what is he not doing? Leading his men and directing the battle, and worse, should he fall in single combat, the Astartes have just lost their best tactical mind. For what? For glory? What glory is there in defeat? So better the champion falls than the captain, for the sake of winning the battle. That's why we think the Codex advocates for champions taking on this duty. Plus, it really fits the mindset of Rabute Guilliman, the man who wrote the Codex, who was all about putting a pragmatic victory ahead of personal glory, a concept many Astartes desperately need to learn. Along with this, champions often serve a role in a vast number of rites and rituals for a chapter. Effectively, they act as a symbol of honor, in the same way we might use a set of scales to invoke justice. The apothecaries of a chapter have numerous duties and responsibilities. The most important is the one you're most likely already familiar with, the retrieval and care of gene seed. Yet this goes a little further than you think. Not only do apothecaries extract gene seed from fallen battle brothers via an arthesium, but they also ensure and maintain its purity. Gene seed slowly mutates and degrades over time, losing its potency. The way gene seed works is mostly unclear, but what it seems to be is likely a soul link or a soul template of the Primarch it's derived from. Imagine you have a hole in the shape of a Primarch, and in that hole you insert a Space Marine. The gene seed is what helps fill those gaps. A mutated gene seed might be unable to fill that full mold, or worse, change the shape of the mold. Apothecaries work tirelessly to prevent these mutations and to counteract them. The secret of maintaining the function of their gene seed is closely guarded. Knowledge only the chapter, the Deathwatch, and the High Lords of Terror possess. It is in fact this knowledge which the High Lords of Terror use to control the Space Marine chapters, as the High Lords are one of the only places the chapter can get new gene seed, the other place being from their fallen battle brothers. In addition, a chapter must regularly send their gene seed back to the High Lords to be tested for purity. Several Marine chapters are in fact genetic experiments by the High Lords to remove perceived gene flaws. The data collected by apothecaries is vital for these experiments. The apothecaries don't just deal with gene seed though. They're master surgeons and doctors, with the full breadth of the Imperium's medical knowledge at their disposal. Apothecaries can patch up an injured Marine from near anything. This is assisted by another of their main duties, the study of biology, Xenos and Astartes. Apothecaries study the enemies of man to better understand their weaknesses, along with developing antitoxins to blights like the Tyranids' poisons. A chapter's chief apothecary is the head of the apothecarium. They oversee the chapter's apothecaries and the training of new apothecaries, along with the assignment of those underlings to companies. Though they're part of the chapter's command echelon, it's unusual for a chief apothecary to ever lead on the battlefield. A chief apothecary's main concern is gene seed. The chapter's stock of gene seed is their responsibility. They are its main guardian, and should the worst come to pass, its last defender. The relationship between the Mechanicus and the Space Marines is fairly complicated. Unlike other Imperial factions, Space Marines are far more self-sufficient. They produce a lot of their own tanks, weapons, and ammo in their chapter's forges. The Mechanicum survives in the Imperium by controlling the knowledge to do this. The fact that Astartes say that and produce their own arms is a huge threat to the Mechanicum security within the Imperium. That being said, the Mechanicum also has technology the Astartes want and need. So the Techmarines are essentially a bridge between the Mechanicus and the Adeptus Astartes. Not quite full priests of Mars, but still respected by the Tech Priests. It's kind of like they have a diploma, and the full Tech Priests have university degrees. Both experts in the same subject, but with the former favouring hands-on work. After their training with the Mechanicum, a Techmarine will be tasked as a supervisor of the chapter's armory. The bulk of the actual work will be done by other Tech Priests and Artificers, the humans whom the Astartes employ to build their technology. The Techmarines help with the tricky bits, performing the rituals and rites too precious to be entrusted outside the teachings of the Mechanicum or the chapter. In addition, Techmarines tend to the chapter's dreadnoughts, seeing to their needs while they slumber, and helping awaken them when the need arises. Techmarines are also those tasked with interring the mortally wounded into dreadnought sarcophagi. A chapter's Master of the Forge is their chief Techmarine, and possesses technical secrets to rival any Magos of the Mechanicum. Many have created whole new types of vehicles and weapons. The creation of the Blood Angel's Furioso Dreadnought chassis is credited to a Blood Angel Master of the Forge. A lot of what are referred to as relics are in fact weapons created by these peerless Astartes artisans. The chaplains of the Adeptus Astartes come on a sliding scale, representing their duties. As with everything Space Marine, the duties of a chaplain vary based on chapter. Yet, even with that variance, there is a scale that seems to apply. We posit that chaplains come on a sliding scale of Space Marine therapists to zealous orators. The former are chaplains who will help their brothers work through mental blocks. When you boil them down, Space Marines are child soldiers pumped full of magic steroids. They tend to be a little unstable. A good example of this is Raphael during the Warhammer Plus series, Angels of Death. Recently, Kazrael has just returned from the Death Watch, and he feels estranged from his brothers. Raphael is worried about him, not only as a brother, but that this might cause Kazrael to fall to the Black Rage. So during the series, Raphael keeps reaching out to Kazrael, trying to reconnect, and offering words of wisdom. He even goes so far as to give his life to save his brother's soul. Meanwhile, you have someone like Grimoldus, who, when seeing his brother grieving, says to toughen up or it'll get him killed. Yet Grimoldus' speeches are some of the fiercest and most awe-inspiring in all of 40k. It's not that Grimoldus doesn't care for his brothers. He greets them with tough love, believing that through faith in the Emperor of Man, they will find true strength. Though interestingly, in Hell's Reach, Grimoldus finds himself questioning his own methods throughout. Regardless, in battle, chaplains inspire their brothers with fiery words and prayers, seeking to protect the souls of their brothers against the ruinous powers. Chaplains are in charge of the purity of a chapter's soul. For chapters like the Black Templars, who call the Emperor of Mankind their god, chaplains lead sermons and bless their brothers in sacred rites. For chapters that don't worship the Emperor as a god, the object of their adulation tends to be their codes of honor and philosophy. For example, in the Salamanders chapter, chaplains are interpreters of the Promethean Creed, the Salamanders' core philosophy. Beyond seeing to the spiritual needs of their brothers, chaplains also tend to be one of the most vital parts of a fortress monastery, the Reclusium, the place where a chapter houses its greatest relics, and often its darkest secrets. Judiciars are the most junior rank of chaplain, all sworn to silence as they prove their zeal with deeds, all while silently preaching to themselves. Having proven themselves to be a capable and zealous warrior, a Judiciar will be raised to the full rank of chaplain and be attached to a company, to instill its warriors with faith and zeal as we've covered. This next part is another moment where Games Workshop has created a lot of contention with these roles. Across the various chapters, Reclusiarchs, High Chaplains, and Masters of Sanctity have all very much been interchangeable depending on chapter. However, we're going to stick to the 5th edition interpretation of the Codex, which places the Master of Sanctity on top. So, second only to the Master of Sanctity, the Reclusiarch oversees the training of new chaplains, and is the chief chaplain in charge of the chapter's reliquary. The Master of Sanctity is the fellow with the biggest, holiest hat in the chapter. They're the spiritual leader of the entire force of Space Marines, and a beacon of its faith for all to see, whether that be a faith in their philosophy or in the God Emperor of Mankind. The librarians of any chapters are the keepers of its history, the stewards of its knowledge, and the guards against the profane and arcane. Treated with as much suspicion as they are respect, librarians often stand apart from their brothers. This exclusion is not only because of their access to information usually restricted from their brothers, but due to their abilities as psychers. Not even Marines are free from the Imperium's deep distrust of psychers, a suspicion only worsened by the Librarians' duty to research forbidden lore. Going through the chapter's librarium, studying and maintaining the ancient lore held within, so that they might better advise their brothers on how to fight the ruinous powers and Xenos abominations, along with their ability to scry into the future and access astropathic networks, which are the psychic links that are used for interstellar communication in the Imperium. Librarians make excellent advisors to captains. Librarians can tell a captain all about what the enemy are capable of, while shielding the captain from knowledge that could corrupt them, for often mere knowledge of chaos can lead to damnation. Yet these long studies yield sharp minds, and are part of the rigorous trials to become a librarian. These trials are far more arduous than those pertaining to the regular Marines, and yield warriors who, when they first see battle, are already as skilled as a veteran. Thus, librarians will be trusted to lead strike forces in crucial missions, though this is a duty usually only entrusted to a high-ranked librarian. Speaking of the ranks of librarian, these are as follows. Lexicanum, or Lexicanium, the lowest rank of the Librarian. The Lexicanum is essentially a wizard's apprentice. They're still working on bringing their skills to the rigorous standards of the Adeptus Astartes. The Codiciers. Codiciers are the standard rank of the Adeptus Astartes Librarian. Most librarians in a chapter will be Codiciers. Epistolary. Epistolaries are some of the most intelligent and adept psychers in the galaxy. Each is a masterful and powerful psyker capable of wielding the warp with immense power. Chief Librarian, Master of Magics and Forbidden Lore. A chapter's Chief Librarian is a deeply respected but circumspect role. The duties of an Astartes captain are as numerous as they are taxing. To rise to this rank is to single an Astartes out as one of the greatest heroes in the Imperium. They join the likes of Demetrian Titus, Kaito Sicarius, and Uriel Ventress. Every Space Marine captain is a peerless warrior and a master of 1,000 tactics. How a captain is selected once again varies with chapter, but usually they're selected from the sergeants of a company by the chapter master. Honestly, this one really does vary. Even amongst the hyper-codex compliant chapters, it seems like the codex doesn't have any firm ruling on the matter. All captains, however, are masters of war and superb combatants, owed largely to their centuries of experience. In addition to their regular duties as a captain of their company, according to the codex, each captain has additional duties to aid in running the chapter. Usually, the first company captain, the master of the keep, is responsible for the defense of the chapter's homeworld, or in the case of a fleet-based chapter, their flagship or flagships. Usually the second company captain, the master of the watch, is the first line of defense for a chapter's homeworld. They plan meticulous warning systems and defensive works to secure their home system. Along with this, they also keep a close eye on the planet's home populations, making sure no taint or corruption has found its way to the chapter's precious recruiting pool. Usually captain of the third, the master of the arsenal is responsible for the tallies and ledgers that govern the stocks of the chapter's munitions. Usually the fourth company captain, the master of the fleet, is in charge of the chapter's fleet. They oversee patrols, and should the chapter fleet ever be arrayed at full strength, the master of the fleet will be at its head, unless the chapter master wishes to take the helm. The fifth company captain, the Master of Marches, is every chapter's very own Excel spreadsheet master. As glamorous as all the bolt of fire and blade clashes of the 41st millennium are, no battle happens without a horde of paperwork preceding and following it. Honestly, this is probably the most vital role any Space Marine captain holds. The Master of Marches effectively decides what battles the chapter fights, and what wars it wages. With the chapter master's blessing, of course. Usually the sixth company captain, the Master of Rites, is responsible for performing the chapter's rituals, rites, and upholding its traditions. They're also charged with recording the chapter's history. Usually the seventh company captain, the Chief Victualler, is responsible for overseeing and recruiting the chapter's serfs. They're essentially the head of many mortals that are needed to support the chapter. Usually the eighth company captain, Lord Executioners have a solemn and brutal duty. Kill high-value enemies by any means necessary. Should an orc war boss need slaying, the chapter will often send their Lord Executioner to see it done. The ninth company captain bears the title Master of Relics, assisting the chaplains and chiefly the Reclusiarch with tending to the relics and their distribution for war. And finally, usually the 10th company captain, the Master of Recruits. The Master of Recruits' duties are to oversee the training of aspirants and recruits. Finally, the head of a chapter. Chapter masters are kings of their domain, and legendary heroes within the Imperium. We're talking about people like Marnius Calgar, Caldor Drago, and Dante. True legends nearly every 40k fan has heard of. How one becomes Chapter Master is entirely dependent on the chapter. Even the very title of Chapter Master varies wildly between chapter. So too do their duties. Though there are two core commonalities between every Chapter Master. Firstly, they are the Commander-in-Chief of their chapter. Their authority is supreme, and they bear all the burdens of command such power gives. Chapter Masters are each political players within the Imperium. And a chapter of Space Marines is quite the bargaining chip. It's chapter masters who deal with the politics of the Imperium, making deals to protect worlds in exchange for supplies, recruits, information, and whatever else the chapter might need. Secondly, a chapter master is the peak of a chapter, an exemplar of its ideals, a paragon of its virtues, and the very best of what that chapter has to offer. The reason we're ending this video on the Lieutenant is that it's a very unique and special role in the current setting. This role was once a popular rank for the Space Marine Legions during the days of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, but it was retired by the Primarch of the Ultramarines when the Legions broke down into chapters. It was a role perceived as cluttering to the new chapters. However, 10,000 years later, Rebute Guilliman would of course arise again, and with him he brings his Primaris Marines. Seeing the state of the Imperium, he quickly realizes that the role of a Space Marine Lieutenant is once again required in this darkest age. Thus, it has returned. Lieutenants are the right-hand men of Space Marine captains. In typical chapter structure, each captain will have 2 lieutenants to help him lead his company. Often, lieutenants are heroes in their own right, Space Marines that would be afforded higher-ranking positions if only those positions were available. Case in point being the protagonist of Space Marine 2, the hero of Forge World Graia, Demetrian Titus, one of Marnius Calgar's favoured brothers, who was once one of the youngest captains the Ultramarines had ever seen at approximately 100 years old. Titus was demoted to lieutenant after a century served in the Death Watch, as upon his return to the Ultramarines, his role as captain of the second was filled. As you see in Space Marine 2, an Astartes lieutenant with the smallest handful of men could make a wild difference in the grand scheme of things. Rebute Guilliman most definitely knew what he was doing when he returned this rank to the Space Marines. Behind every paragraph and reference in these videos, there's a mountain of research, editing, and more than a few burnt-out cogitators. That's where our patrons come in, with multiple tiers offering a variety of things, from exclusive chats in our Discord to personalized artwork created for our individual patrons. Every subscription keeps the machine spirit of the Astartes Anonymous YouTube channel appeased. And for our top-tier patrons, a display on the Wall of Honor at the end of each podcast. So if you're enjoying the content, please do consider taking a quick look at our Patreon. Thanks so much for watching.